Hi, I'm Jacqueline Gobieluk, and I'm with Metropolitan Nannies. I have a history in business and finance with a degree in business administration from George Mason University. I was a nanny for over 15 years for a family before being the business development manager and now the owner of Metropolitan Nannies. Today, I will be going over how to hire a nanny.
What is a nanny?
A nanny is a child care provider that not only cares for your child in a home environment, in your home environment, but also can do other things outside of just child care. There's a lot of child care related items that nannies will do. That includes child's laundry, child's room, making sure it's picked up, organized, put things away. The nanny will also make meals for the child, take children to activities, whatever necessary. That could be play dates or the local soccer match. It just depends. Nannies also can work for more than 2 years. A lot of people confuse au pairs and babysitters with nannies, but nannies is by far much different than both of those. They can work between 1 to 10 years. They can do extra activities for the family, like mentioned before, and they're someone that's going to become a part of the family. They're going to be another family member, somewhat like a mother or father.
What questions should I ask myself before hiring a nanny?
Before actually hiring a nanny, you're going to want to think about several factors. What hours do you need the nanny? Some families use a nanny Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, whereas other families need to incorporate their travel time to and from work. So many nannies actually work between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. at night. So you'll want to find out what schedule works best for your family, and you'll want to look for a nanny within those areas. Also, what you want to think about with a nanny is what language do they speak. Most nannies will speak English clearly and fluently, but there's many nannies that speak another language as their first language. So you want to see if that's something that you'd be interested in doing as well. A lot of nannies like to teach the children 2 languages, English and their native language. So that's something to consider. Also, will you need driving? Is driving going to be involved, taking your child to activities? If that's the case, you want to make sure that your nanny is also a driver and has a clean driving record. Another thing to think about is, will you need any extra circumstances? Will you need overnights on occasion? Will you need weekend help? Will you need evening help on occasion? Those are all things you want to consider in finding a nanny. You want to make sure all those areas are addressed. And if those are something that you need, you want to make sure that you put that in your criteria for a nanny, because a nanny might be great, but she can't do evenings or weekends, and that might be a deal breaker for you. So you want to make sure that you look at all areas that might come to play down the road at some point, and make sure that nanny can be with you for the long haul.
How much should I budget for a nanny salary?
A nanny's salary is going to be dependent on how many hours she works, and also if there's any extracurricular activities you'd like the nanny to provide, as such cleaning, driving, and things like that. The going rate right now for nannies is $15 an hour. The hour, although you're not paying the nanny on an hourly basis, but basically on a salary basis, you can calculate the salary based on a $15 hourly. Most nannies today are working between 50 to 55 hours a week, and their salaries range between $650 and $750 a week. But that is also for one child. Each additional child is $1 extra per hour paid directly to the nanny. So if you have 3 children at home and the nanny is caring for all 3 children for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, that is a 50-hour work week. Therefore, you're looking at paying your nanny anywhere between $750 to $850 a week. So you really need to take into consideration what are the hours and how many children and other activities involved in paying the nanny their salary range.
What benefits should I offer to my nanny?
Benefits that you should offer to a nanny would be 2 weeks paid vacation, 1 week paid sick leave, and usually you'd want to offer the nanny 7 federal holidays. How that breaks down is the 2 weeks paid vacation. 1 week is the family's choice of which week they would like to go on vacation that the nanny gets paid. 1 week is the nanny's choice. she'll decide which week within that year that she would like time off, and of course that's paid. In addition to that is the 5 days sick leave. The nanny would be able to take 5 paid sick days within that 1 calendar year. After that, you would also want to consider giving the nanny paid federal holidays. Usually there are 7 or 8, depending on what you consider a federal holiday, but you would want to consider paying your nanny for federal holidays. That is the standard for all nannies with benefits.
How do I know if my nanny is legal to work in the United States?
Before hiring a nanny, you must be sure the nanny is legal to work in the United States by requesting a copy of their Social Security card, a work permit or a green card, or if they're a citizen, a legal passport. Those are the documents you'll need in order to request a background check of the nanny to ensure that she is legal to work in the United States.
What do I need to do in terms of taxes?
When hiring a nanny, you want to be sure to calculate all the taxes for the nanny. With that, you'll want to contact a local tax expert, preferably someone who's dealt with nanny taxes in the past. In order to find the tax expert, you'd want to research, maybe by going through the yellow pages, or do an internet-based search and search under nanny tax specialists.
What criteria should my nanny meet?
We require that nannies must have a minimum of 2 years childcare experience with a minimum of 3 childcare references that are non-family related. We also require that the nannies speak English clearly and fluently and comprehend it, as well as be able to write English, as that can become very important with writing notes or keeping a journal for the children and for the parents. One of the other requirements that we think is extremely important would be to make sure the nanny can drive. You may find that down the road there would be an instance where the nanny would need to take a child to an activity or a doctor's appointment. So knowing if the nanny drives is also a good requirement that we feel a nanny should exceed. Besides that, you definitely want to do background checks and check the references. That's probably the most important thing, because the references are going to give you what the nanny's experience is, what age group the nanny worked with, and also how the nanny interacted with that family. So that's incredibly important. 2 years childcare experience, 3 childcare references, make sure they drive, speak English clearly and fluently, and also check the references.
How can I find a nanny?
Finding a nanny can be tricky, but if you use an agency, of course they're going to be able to help you, or you can try to do it on your own. And with that, we recommend using the local newspaper, word of mouth, and of course internet services.
What are the benefits and drawbacks of using an agency?
One of the most important factors of having a nanny agency do the nanny search is peace of mind. A nanny agency is not only going to look at what your needs are, but they're going to screen each and every nanny according to what your needs are and the basic techniques that we use to screen the nannies, which includes Social Security number verification, that includes the background check for criminal investigation reports, a driving record, making sure they're legal to work in the United States, and we're always here to answer any questions or concerns that you might have during the interview or nanny search process. We can offer guidance as far as questions to ask every nanny in an interview. We can offer you contracts. We can offer you just time and effort that goes into it. We have that. And a drop of a hat, we can send you applicants that are qualified and ready to go and start working. So there's a lot of time saving in hiring an agency as well. Part of the downfall of hiring an agency, and I think the only downfall of an agency, is the agency fee. We do charge large fees to find a nanny for you. There is a membership fee that you should acknowledge, anywhere between $100 and $300 to start a search. There's also a placement fee. Placement fees to hire a nanny can range between $3,000 to $5,000, and anywhere above and beyond that. or an agency can charge a percentage. Some agencies charge 10% of the nanny's gross salary. Some agencies charge as much as 20% of the nanny's gross salary. So I think that is the only downfall to an agency, is the cost. By far, the benefits exceed anything that you're going to pay. Peace of mind, quality childcare provider, a much shorter search time. Agencies have candidates ready to go at the drop of a hat. So you call us, we can send someone out within the next couple of days for you to interview with. We're also a great backup plan. If your nanny is sick or on vacation, we're here to provide you with a backup care solution. We have nannies that will come to your house and care for your child when your nanny is not able to do so. So you're not only getting a nanny search, but you're getting a backup program and someone that's going to be there to answer any questions throughout the process after you've hired a nanny, and can help you provide backup service at any time. So there's a lot of benefits that come with an agency that if you found a nanny on your own, you wouldn't necessarily be able to use those benefits.
What are the benefits and drawbacks of doing an independent search?
With the independent nanny search, you will find that there are drawbacks and benefits. The number one drawback is going to be that it's very difficult for families to confirm the nanny is legal to work in the United States, has the references and requirements that a child care provider should have in order to care for children in your home. It's also difficult to reach references and to verify that those are accurate and real references. It can be very difficult to find backup child care. If you find yourself that your nanny's not going to be there for a week, she's taken her week of vacation, is that a time that you're going to take time off from work to care for your child? What is your backup plan for that? If you are doing an independent search, you don't have a network of nannies to call on that can cover you in the event that your nanny is not going to be there for a few days. Some of the other drawbacks are background checks. You're going to find it very difficult to run a background check on a nanny. There is limited services for individual people looking for background checks on other individuals. It's very limited. So without going through an agency, you're going to find that being certain that the nanny is capable of caring for your children by providing references, background checks, prior child care experience, it's kind of up in the air. It's pretty limited. One of the benefits of doing an independent search is cost. It is much less expensive to do your own search. The cost that you'll probably incur would be running an ad in a local paper. Also, if you wanted to do an internet search, you usually have to pay for that as well. Word of mouth can be very difficult, and it's time consuming. It's very time consuming, and you want to make sure that you find the right child care provider to care for your family. These are your children that we're talking about, so it's not something that you should take lightly. And by using independent searches, are you really sure that you're going to be getting the candidate that has the most experience? It can take anywhere from a week to 3 months to find that particular candidate. Of the candidates you're going to screen, many of them aren't going to speak English, many of them aren't going to be legal to work in the United States, and most of them are not going to have the criteria, which include the experience and the references able to provide for you. So you'll have to screen several candidates in order to get to a few of the good ones that are out there.
If I decide to use an agency, what should my part be in the search?
If you decide to use an agency to find a nanny, your part, and the most important part, is being upfront and honest about what your needs are, what your children's needs are, and what the criteria is of a nanny, whether it's the hours, the days, any extra activities that you'd like the nanny to perform. You need to be very upfront and honest and allow the agency to find you the right individual. If you fill out the application and you don't put down that you have a dog, that can be extremely critical because a lot of nannies are not interested in working with a home with pets. So you want to cover all areas of the application. Be very upfront, very honest with the agency. They work with families every day, so they're not going to be surprised by anything that you have to say. That's probably the most important thing. The rest is up to the agency. They're going to go through all the information that you've given them and provide you with candidates that fit within the description that you've laid out for your family. And that's really the only part to it. I mean, you do your part by being honest and upfront about things. The agency is going to provide you with qualified caregivers for you to choose from. And as long as you're accessible and available to interview with those candidates, the process is easy. You just need to be upfront and honest.
What should I consider when doing an independent search?
Things you must consider when doing an independent search is, where are you going to have the nannies contact you? Are you going to give them a home phone number or a cell phone number or a work number? You want to have a number in place for those nannies to contact you. One thing to also consider with that phone number is you're going to get a lot of calls. Regarding the candidates that I described earlier, some aren't going to speak English, some are not going to be legal, and some will have no childcare experience. So you're going to have a lot of calls from many individuals, and even after you have found a candidate, you're still going to get calls. They will continue for months on end. So you want to be prepared. So you might want to go ahead and purchase a separate phone line just for your nanny search. Also, you might want to consider doing a separate email. Your email will be flooded with many inquiries, and you may not want to mix that with your work email or your home email if that has something to do with your family life. You don't want to fill your inbox with many additional emails based on your nanny search. So things that you might want to consider: getting a separate phone line just for the search, and also a separate email box just for the nanny search. The nanny search can be done via a local website. It can be done through local newspapers and word of mouth. But you certainly want to keep the communication line separate from your everyday use.
How do I narrow down the pool of applicants?
One of the best ways to narrow down the pool of applicants is to have each applicant fill out an application that you put together, wanting to know what their availability is, what extra activities they're willing to provide, experiences in the past through other jobs that they've had, childcare, interests, what their hobbies are, to see if that matches up with your criteria, the criteria that you worked on in the beginning, to see what your needs were as far as hours, days, driving if necessary, languages spoken, things like that. And by going through those applications, you're going to be able to narrow down which candidates meet your criteria, and then which candidates exceed your criteria, or which ones that do not meet your criteria. So that's going to be the first part of narrowing down your pool of candidates, is have them fill out an application, go through each and every application, and see what's on there and if it's something that you're looking for.
How many nannies should I interview?
Really, the choice is yours on how many applicants you wish to pursue before finding out which nanny is best for your family. After reviewing the applications and deciding from there which candidate you'd like to pursue, you'll want to do an in-depth interview, personal interview with each and every candidate. It really depends on how many applications that you came across that you felt were in line with what you're looking for. That could be anywhere between 1 to 25 candidates. With an agency, you're looking at anywhere between 1 to 3 or 4 candidates. But doing your independent search, you really have to go through quite a few of the nannies to really find the one that fits your needs. And that number can't be determined by me. It's going to be a number that's determined by you, something that's going to make you feel most comfortable with the child care provider caring for your children. So it may be a few numbers. It could be as many as 50. It's really up to you and what the applicants have, the applications that you received, and which ones look like they'd be a good criteria fit for your family.
Should I screen their references?
You absolutely want to screen references. Each and every nanny should be able to provide you with 3 solid references that are non-family related. That's going to be extremely important when choosing a nanny for your family, as those references can provide you with information on what her experience was, what the ages of the children were that she cared for, how long she worked for that family. Was she a long-term nanny or a short-term nanny? It'll also provide you with details on how that nanny interacted with your family. So it can be extremely important to check references. You're also going to want to see if the nanny has had any health problems or have had a health check, One thing that we always look for is a nanny with a TB test. It's tuberculosis, and that can be contagious. So you want to make sure that the nanny is clear of TB by having her conduct a medical examination. You also might want to be sure to check to see if that nanny has had CPR certification. One of the minimum requirements an agency has is that that nanny has a current certification in infant and toddler CPR. So those are some of the minimum checks that you want to make sure the nanny can provide for you. A health screen, references, and also what their certificates are. If they have any child development certificates, CPR certificates, anything like that that would aid to the nanny being able to care for your child. So those are things you want to look at.
What kind of background check should I do, and how do I go about it?
You absolutely want to do background checks on the candidates that you feel would be a good fit with your family. Anywhere between 1 to 3 candidates. If you check too many candidates, it would be a costly procedure, as background checks can cost anywhere between $20 to $200. It can be very wide range depending on how many areas that nanny has lived and wherever their social security number and driving record comes up to be a part of the search. So part of the background check is learning about the nanny's criminal history, also making sure that they're valid to work in the United States by checking their social security number verification. And you also want to be sure that the nanny's driving record is included. Whether or not the nanny drives your children, that can be a large indicator of the nanny's common sense and judgment. So you want to make sure that you check all 3 of those. How you would go about checking that is possibly by doing a web-based search to find a background investigation company, or by opening up your local Yellow Pages and seeing if there's any investigative services that you can use to do your own private search. Some states have agencies that will provide the search for you. Contact your local nanny agency. They may be able to do the search for you at a minimal cost. Those are your resources that we recommend using for your background checks, but you absolutely want to do background checks on the nanny.
Should I interview all applicants?
You should not interview every individual that's applied to be a nanny for your family. The individuals that you should interview with are the ones that the applications drew some type of connection to what you're looking for. Those nannies are going to be the ones that you want to spend the time in interviewing with them. If a nanny just calls, doesn't fill out an application, or sends you an email, say don't right away interview with that person. Have them fill out the application first. And by going through the applications and deciding what candidates would make a good fit with your family, then go and absolutely interview in person each of the candidates that meet your criteria through their application.
How long should I devote to each interview?
You want to give yourself plenty of time to interview each candidate. What that means is the interview could take anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours. You're going to ask the nanny a series of questions that tailor what you're looking for. And you're going to want to see how the nanny answers that. Some nannies will answer it short. Some nannies will go into elaborate details for each answer to the questions that you ask. But you want to give yourself plenty of time. You'll also realize that when you meet the nanny candidate, there may be a connection there right from the start. From the first question that she answers, there could be a connection. If there's a connection during the interview process, before or after the questions, you probably are going to spend more time with that candidate because you're going to get to know that candidate a little bit more closely, find out a little bit more about that person. Maybe give them a tour around the house, have them interact with the child. So there will be a connection there. If you don't feel that connection, trust your gut instinct and move on. The interview can be conducted in a very short period of time. Please give yourself plenty of time to interview that candidate. And if you're still not sure, have that candidate come back for a second interview. That is a very important step in also the interview process. So interviews can take anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours. And if the candidate is a very good potential fit for your family, please have the candidate come back for a second interview. You can go over additional questions asked and have them interact with the children for a longer period of time.
Should I have my children present during the interview?
It's a personal decision whether to have your child present or not present during a nanny interview. We always recommend to have the nanny meet the child, whether it's in the beginning when the nanny first arrives or toward the end when the nanny can interact with the child. We always recommend that there is a connection. If for some reason you feel like your child wouldn't be able to handle it as well, meeting the nanny up front, then perhaps during a second interview you would want the nanny to meet with your child. But it does have a good indication to it. If the nanny meets with your child and they take well to one another, that can be a huge factor in deciding if the nanny is a good fit for your family. So it's really up to you. It's pretty personal if you'd like to have the nanny meet the child, but we do recommend that the nanny does meet with the child and there is some type of interaction between the two during the first interview, and of course during the second interview to have much more interaction between the two.
What kind of questions should I ask?
You want to ask your nanny several questions, and a lot of the questions will come from the criteria that you laid out to begin with when your nanny search started. Of those things, you'll want to know if the nanny has had any child-related courses or classes that they've taken. Have they taken a child development course? Are they specialized in early child development? You'll also want to find out how many years of childcare experience they have. Has it been 1 year? Has it been 15 years? That will determine the nanny's experience. Also, part of our search is the ages of the children she's cared for. If the nanny's cared for newborns, great. If she's cared for toddlers, great. But what are the ages of your children? Does she have experience with those ages? You want to be sure of that. You'll also want to find out if the nanny's worked for her previous families for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. Those things can be important. If you're looking for a long-term nanny, those questions can be necessary in finding out if this is a nanny that likes to stay with a family for a long period of time. Does she, grow very close with the family? Has the nanny traveled with families? Does the nanny drive? How long has she been driving for? Is she a U.S. citizen? Does she have family in the United States or outside the United States? Some of those questions can be important because at times, if the nanny wants to go visit her family and they live in another country, usually the nanny will request 3 to 4 weeks time off. So you want to be sure that if you're hiring a nanny, you ask certain questions that could potentially arise throughout the year or years to come with that nanny. So those are some of the basic questions. You most definitely want to talk to them about your own needs and find out if those would work with her schedule as well. But asking those simple questions, along with asking maybe some more personal questions regarding the nanny. Does she have children of her own? Who cares for her children when she's at work? How long has she lived in the area? Some of these other questions will also become quite important, but maybe aren't necessary in the beginning or for the first interview, but certainly in the second interview or the first interview, whichever you prefer. But those are some of the questions that we use in determining what the nanny's connection would be for a family and if they're qualified and prepared to work with the family is looking for.
Should I hire the nanny for a trial period before hiring full-time?
We absolutely recommend a trial period with each and every nanny candidate before hiring that potential nanny to work for your family on a permanent basis. What that means is a trial basis could be 1 to 5 days. Usually within the first 1 to 3 days, you'll want to be home and present during the nanny and child interaction, just so you can get a personal, in-depth view of how they work well together and if she's following the guidelines that you've laid out for her. The trial period is a great benefit to hiring a nanny because if it's not going to work out, you know within the first few days, and you don't have to go weeks on end to find out if the nanny is a good fit. So trial period is definitely a very important part before offering a nanny a final contract agreement to work for your family. It can last a few days, 1 day, up to 5 days. You will be required to pay the nanny for their time spent with your child, but it is a good indication of whether that nanny is going to be a good fit with your child and your family.
What is the next step after the trial period?
The next step after the trial period would be to complete a contract nanny family agreement. in the contract, you're going to want to have specifics. The start date of the employment and for how long the employment will last. Usually it's up to a year. Sometimes families put in a 2-year contract, but majority do a 1-year contract. You'll also want to put down the times that the nanny is required to work, Monday through Friday, whether it's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., but you want to put those hours down as a guideline for the nanny and what her schedule is going to be. You also want to put down there the nanny's pay. That's gross and net. And you'll also want to take out what taxes you're going to withhold. There are several taxes you're not required to withhold, and there's taxes that you are. So you want to put that down in writing as well. Along with that, you want to detail what the benefits are the nanny is going to be provided. So 2 weeks paid vacation, put down 1 week paid family's choice, 1 week paid nanny's choice. You'll also want to add in there that there is 5 or less or more times where it's paid time off for sick leave. Those are some of the benefits that you'd want to put down. You'll also want to add what federal holidays you're considering for the paid time off. Usually there's 7. There's 7, 8, 6, whatever you consider a federal holiday. You'll want to put that down as paid time off. Within that, you'll want to put down your children's names and ages and when she'll be caring for those children. If there's a child that's in school, you'll put that also down. If there's a child that's home all day, you'll want to put that down. If there's any driving required, you'll want to put down that the nanny will be driving the children around, and the nanny will need to be reimbursed for mileage. There's a government standard rate that you can find via web search, and that's the rate that you're going to want to pay your nanny for driving your children around. It's usually per mileage. You'll also want to put on the contract overtime pay. That can be a huge area of just complication. After the nanny stops working for your family, if you did not put that in writing what overtime pay was, you could be slapped with a lawsuit. So in the contract, you want to be sure that above and beyond the amount of hours that she's worked, you want to put down how much you're going to pay her per hour over the standard work week. Some families pay time and a half. Some parents pay the exact rate per hour that they're making on a salary basis. It's really up to you, but you want to be very clear on overtime pay on the contract. You'll also want to put termination on there. How many weeks in advance the family requires for the nanny to give them termination. Some families say that 4 weeks is the allowance for termination. Some families say 2 weeks. It's really up to you, but you want to put down the termination guidelines and also sign it. One more important tip for the contract would be to narrow down in 1 year what you're going to be doing with the nanny. Will you be increasing her benefits or pay? Something you must consider, as most nannies will be interested in getting a pay raise at the end of each year. So things that you might want to consider in adding to the contract.